Welcome to the channel. Before we begin today's story, I'd like to ask for your support. If you like documentaries, detective films, and true stories like this, please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. It may seem like a small thing, but it helps YouTube recommend these videos to more people and helps the channel grow. Thank you. Now, let's talk about Lars Mittank. This may be one of the most disturbing videos ever recorded on a security camera. Not because it depicts violence, not because it depicts a crime, but because, after all these years, there is still no definitive explanation for what happens next. The man you are looking at is Lars Mittank, 28 years old, a tourist from Germany. He is sitting at the airport in Bulgaria. He is talking on the phone with his mother. In a few minutes, he must board a flight home. Everything should be as usual. Everything should be over. But then, something changes. Lars suddenly turns his head. He looks toward the entrance to the room. His body language instantly changes. The conversation stops. He stands up. He drops his luggage and starts running. He doesn't walk. He's in no hurry. Running. He runs through the airport, goes through security, through the restricted area, through the airport grounds. He climbs over the fence, disappears into a nearby field. And no one has definitely seen him again. No confirmed contact. No confirmed phone activity. No confirmed trace of Lars himself. Many years later, one question still remains. What did Lars Mittank see? Or perhaps, what did he think he saw? To understand why this case became one of Europe's most widely discussed missing person mysteries, we need to go back to the summer of 2014. Lars Mittank wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't involved in organized crime. He wasn't known for reckless or dangerous behavior. By all publicly available accounts, he was an ordinary young man from northern Germany. He worked. He had family, he had friends, and like millions of Europeans every year, he decided to spend a vacation on Bulgaria's Black Sea coast. The destination was Golden Sands, a popular resort area near the city of Varna, known for its beaches, its nightlife, its hotels, and the thousands of tourists who visit every summer. For Lars and his friends, it was supposed to be a simple holiday, a few days of relaxation, a few drinks, a few stories to tell when they returned home. Nothing unusual, nothing that seemed remarkable at the time. Certainly nothing that would later become an international mystery. But many strange stories begin in ordinary places, and that's exactly what makes them so unsettling. Because nobody wakes up in the morning expecting to become part of a mystery. Lars certainly didn't. During the trip, something happened that would later become one of the most discussed parts of the case. According to multiple reports, Lars became involved in a conflict with several men. The exact details remain unclear. Different accounts describe the incident slightly differently, and some details have never been independently verified. But one fact appears consistent across nearly every version of the story. Lars suffered an injury to his ear. At first glance, that may not sound particularly significant, but the injury was serious enough that a doctor reportedly advised him not to fly immediately. Changes in air pressure during a flight could potentially worsen the condition, so a decision had to be made. His friends returned to Germany. Lars stayed behind, alone, in a foreign country, waiting for medical clearance to fly home. It's important not to overstate this moment. Millions of people travel alone every year without incident. But investigators and commentators have often pointed out something interesting. Being isolated can make unusual situations harder to navigate. Not because isolation causes people to disappear, but because it removes familiar support systems, friends, family, people who might notice when something starts to feel wrong. For the first time during the trip, Lars was completely on his own. And according to what happened next, that may have mattered more than anyone realized. After his friends returned home, Lars remained in the Varna area. At first, nothing seemed especially unusual. He was waiting for his ear to heal. He remained in contact with his family, and he was preparing to return to Germany as soon as possible. But then, the phone calls began to change. According to statements later given by his family, Lars began expressing fears that didn't seem to match what others around him were observing. He told his mother that people were following him. He believed the men involved in the earlier conflict might still be looking for him. He sounded increasingly worried, increasingly concerned, and increasingly convinced that he could be in danger. One reason this case continues to fascinate people is that nobody knows exactly what Lars was experiencing during those final days. Was there a real threat? Was there a misunderstanding? Was he interpreting ordinary events as something more dangerous? We simply don't know. And that's important, because this case has generated countless theories over the years. But confirmed facts are relatively few. Questions are everywhere. What we do know is that Lars appeared frightened, and fear can change the way people interpret the world around them. When someone becomes convinced that danger may be nearby, ordinary events can begin to feel threatening. A stranger looking in your direction, a car parked nearby, someone walking behind you. Things many people might ignore can suddenly feel significant. At some point, Lars reportedly changed hotels. He seemed uncomfortable staying in one place for very long. He also spoke with his mother about his bank cards. According to reports, he wanted them blocked. Why? Because he apparently believed someone might be able to track him through financial transactions. That detail has become one of the most debated aspects of the case. To some observers, it suggests organized and deliberate thinking. To others, it suggests that his fears may have been intensifying. The problem is that both interpretations remain possible, and without Lars here to explain his actions, we're left trying to reconstruct a story from fragments. Eventually, the day arrived when Lars was supposed to fly home. For his family, this should have been the end of the ordeal. A stressful week, an unfortunate injury, a strange experience abroad, but nothing more. Soon he would be back in Germany, back with people who knew him, back somewhere familiar, safe. At least, that was the expectation. On July 1st, 2014, Lars arrived at Varna Airport. Before boarding his flight, he called his mother. The conversation began normally. There was no indication that within minutes, this case would become one of Europe's most widely discussed missing person mysteries. He spoke with her, discussed his plans, talked about returning home. Everything appeared routine. Then something changed. Something investigators, journalists, online communities, and researchers have been trying to understand for more than a decade. According to later accounts from his mother, Lars suddenly became alarmed during the conversation. She later recalled him saying words that are frequently quoted in discussions about the case. "I don't want to die here." Shortly afterward, the call ended. Think about that for a moment. Those may have been among the final known words he ever spoke to a family member. No one listening at the time could have known their significance. But looking back, they feel chilling. Not because they explain anything, but because they don't. They leave us with the same question that has haunted this case from the beginning. What was Lars afraid of? Was there something real? Or was he reacting to something only he could see? More than a decade later, no one has been able to answer that question with certainty. Then comes the video. The footage that transformed a local missing person investigation into an international mystery. Even today, millions of people have watched these few seconds, over and over again, searching for clues, looking for something everyone else missed, trying to answer an impossible question. What happened during Lars Mittank's final documented moments? The video begins innocently enough. Lars is inside the airport. Nothing appears unusual. No obvious threat. No visible confrontation. No clear emergency. Then suddenly, his attention shifts toward the doorway. He appears to notice something. What that was, no one knows. What happens next takes only seconds. Lars stands up, leaves his belongings behind, and starts running. Fast. Lars, as though he suddenly felt the need to get away from where he was. People nearby appear surprised. No one seems to understand what's happening, because nobody around him appears to be reacting in the same way. He runs through the terminal, through restricted areas, past security barriers, eventually reaching the outer perimeter of the airport. Then he climbs a fence, disappears from view. And that's it. The last confirmed footage of Lars Mittank. The last moment anyone can say with certainty, there he is. After that, the trail goes cold. Once it became clear that Lars could not be located, a search effort began. At first, many people believed the mystery would be solved quickly. After all, how far could someone go? He had no luggage, no confirmed transportation, no known destination, and according to available information, he left the airport carrying very little. Search efforts focused on the area surrounding the airport. Investigators looked for signs of injury, signs of movement, anything that might indicate where he had gone after leaving the cameras behind. But the answers never came. Days passed, then weeks, then months, and gradually, something unusual happened. Instead of becoming clearer, the case became more confusing. As news reports spread through Germany and beyond, Lars Mittank's disappearance began attracting international attention. The surveillance footage was released publicly. Over the years, it would be viewed by millions of people. Forums discussed it. News programs analyzed it. Online communities became fascinated by it. Because unlike many disappearances, this case appeared to capture the moment everything changed. Not the aftermath, not the consequences, the moment itself. Or at least something very close to it. And that created an irresistible mystery. Everyone who watched the footage seemed to ask the same question. What caused him to run? Yet despite years of discussion, no explanation has ever been universally accepted. As happens in many high-profile missing person cases, reported sightings began to appear. People claimed they had seen Lars. Some believed they had encountered him in Bulgaria. Others reported possible sightings elsewhere in Europe. A few accounts appeared surprisingly detailed, and for a brief moment, each report created hope. Maybe this was the breakthrough. Maybe the mystery was finally ending. Maybe Lars was still alive. But none of the reported sightings produced conclusive evidence. No photograph could be definitively confirmed. No witness account solved the mystery. And over time, investigators found themselves facing the same problem again and again. Possibilities, but not proof. The difference between those two things is enormous, especially in a case that has attracted so much public attention. Because once millions of people become emotionally invested in a mystery, patterns can begin to appear everywhere. People want answers, and sometimes the desire for answers becomes stronger than the evidence itself. Yet evidence is exactly what this case lacks. Not theories, not speculation, evidence. And that's one of the reasons Lars Mittank remains missing today. Let's examine the first major theory, the possibility that Lars's fears were based on a real threat. Supporters of this idea point to several details. Lars had recently been involved in a confrontation. According to accounts from his family, he repeatedly expressed concern about specific individuals. He reportedly changed accommodations and appeared reluctant to remain in one place. He also appeared genuinely frightened during his final days. From this perspective, Lars believed the danger was real. It's not impossible. Strange things happen. Conflicts escalate. People can become targets of intimidation. But there is a problem. After more than 10 years, no verified evidence has emerged confirming that anyone was actively pursuing Lars. No confirmed suspects, no documented threats, no witness testimony that conclusively supports the theory. That doesn't prove the theory is wrong, but it does leave it without strong supporting evidence. And in an investigation, evidence matters more than possibilities. The second major theory focuses on Lars himself. It suggests that he may have been experiencing some form of psychological or emotional crisis during his final days. This is a sensitive subject, and it's important to approach it carefully. No public diagnosis can be made from a distance, and nobody can know with certainty what Lars was experiencing internally. However, some observers have pointed out that several reported behaviors appear consistent with someone experiencing intense fear or severe emotional distress. The belief that people were following him, the concern about being tracked through bank cards, the sudden flight through the airport, the apparent reaction to something that others did not visibly react to. Again, none of this proves anything, but it does form a pattern that many people find difficult to ignore. What's important to remember is that mental health crises are medical situations, not character flaws, not evidence of weakness, and not something that only happens to other people. Stress, isolation, sleep disruption, physical injury, emotional pressure. Sometimes multiple factors can interact in ways that are difficult to predict. This theory does not answer every question, but it attempts to explain why Lars's perception of danger may have become very different from the perception of those around him. And for many people who have studied the case, that possibility cannot be completely dismissed. The third major theory is perhaps the most controversial. Some people believe that Lars intentionally disappeared, that he chose to leave his previous life behind, and that the events at the airport were part of a deliberate attempt to vanish. At first glance, there are details that some people believe support this possibility. Lars was still communicating with family members. He was handling practical matters, making travel arrangements, and dealing with the consequences of his injury. Some of his actions appeared purposeful. Because of this, some observers have argued that perhaps he wanted a fresh start. Perhaps he was trying to escape something. Perhaps the airport incident was intended to create confusion. But this theory faces serious challenges. The biggest one is simple. If someone plans to disappear voluntarily, why abandon the very things needed to survive? His luggage remained behind. Important personal belongings remained behind. Resources that would have made starting over much easier remained behind. Beginning a new life is difficult under ideal circumstances. Doing so without preparation becomes dramatically harder. And over the years, investigators have never uncovered convincing evidence that Lars successfully established a new identity elsewhere. That doesn't make the theory impossible, but it does make it difficult to prove. And once again, the case returns to the same problem. Possibilities exist. Certainty does not. The fourth theory is often considered one of the simplest, and sometimes the simplest explanations deserve serious consideration. According to this possibility, Lars fled the airport while experiencing intense fear, distress, or confusion. After leaving the airport grounds, he entered unfamiliar surroundings. He had no support system nearby, no confirmed destination, and very limited resources. If something went wrong shortly afterward, consequences could have been severe. The area surrounding Varna Airport includes fields, overgrown terrain, and locations where a person can become difficult to locate. Search operations can be extensive, but they are not perfect. History contains many cases in which missing people remained undiscovered despite significant search efforts. This theory suggests that the mystery may not involve a conspiracy, or criminals, or a secret new identity. It may involve a tragic sequence of events that occurred shortly after Lars disappeared from the cameras. The challenge, however, remains the same. No definitive evidence has emerged to confirm this explanation. No discovery has provided the missing piece. And because of that, the theory remains exactly what it is: a possibility, not a conclusion. What fascinates me most about this case isn't the disappearance itself. It's the speed of the transformation. Think about it. Just days earlier, Lars appears to have been an ordinary tourist enjoying a vacation with friends. Then, something changes. And within a remarkably short period of time, we find ourselves watching one of the most discussed pieces of surveillance footage associated with a missing person case. That transition is deeply unsettling, because it reminds us how little we sometimes understand about what another person is experiencing internally. There is another reason this case stays with people. Many mysteries eventually provide at least some answers. Maybe not immediately, maybe not completely, but eventually. This case doesn't. It leaves a void, and human beings dislike uncertainty. We want explanations. We want narratives. We want closure. Lars Mittank's story offers none of those things. Instead, it leaves us staring at a few seconds of video and asking the same question again and again. Why did he run? The fact that people continue asking that question more than a decade later tells us something important. The mystery is not only about Lars. It's about our need to understand human behavior, to believe that actions have understandable causes, to believe that every effect has an explanation. This case challenges that belief, and perhaps that's why it remains so powerful. Beyond the mystery itself, there are lessons worth remembering. First, if someone close to you suddenly begins expressing intense fear, extreme suspicion, or concerns that seem unusual or difficult to understand, take it seriously. Not because they're necessarily right, and not because they're necessarily wrong, but because they may be experiencing genuine distress. The goal is not to argue. The goal is to help. Second, isolation can make difficult situations harder. When people are far from home, separated from trusted support networks, challenges can become much more overwhelming. Staying connected matters. Third, when we encounter uncertainty, we should be careful about becoming attached to explanations that lack evidence. The internet loves certainty. Real investigations rarely provide it. Sometimes the most honest answer is, we don't know. And in this case, that remains true. Today, Lars Mittank is still missing. His family still hasn't received any definitive answers. Investigators still haven't received any definitive answers, and neither have we. Perhaps there's someone out there who knows more about what happened after Lars crossed the fence. Or perhaps no one knows but Lars himself. More than 10 years have passed, and yet those few seconds of airport footage continue to raise questions no one has been able to answer. Not because people haven't tried, but because some mysteries refuse to give up their secrets. And perhaps that's what makes this case so unforgettable. It's not just the disappearance. It's the uncertainty, an unresolved question frozen in a few moments of video. The man stands up, leaving everything behind, running, and disappears. If this mystery is ever solved, it could answer one of the longest-standing questions surrounding modern missing persons cases. Until then, the overall picture remains unchanged. A man is running toward something, or away from something, and no one knows what happened. Leave your theories in the comments. If you liked this story, or if it made you think, please support the channel. Subscribe, like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you have your own thoughts on the Lars Mittank case, share them in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Stay curious, and take care.